friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing the video that my patrons voted on for September, and that is a 5-star predictions video. So I went through my TBR and I picked out 4 that I think will be 5-star reads for myself for different reasons, and we're just gonna jump into it. The first book that I picked out, I really hope I love, and that is The Light Fantastic by Terry Pratchett. So this is the second book in the Discworld series. I know there are debates on like how to read the series, where to start, whatever. I have read The Color of Magic. I believe I gave that book 5 stars many years ago when I reviewed it on this channel, and every once in a while I get a question on that video like, when are you going to read the rest? Why not now? Why not something funny and light and fantasy? A lot of my TBR for the fall season is darker, and so for this 5-star prediction I have decided to put in something that is supposed to be funny and light and magical, and it is petite, so that's always a plus as well. I am not really sure what this is about. The synopsis on the back is vague. As it moves towards a seemingly inevitable collision with a malevolent red star, the Discworld has only one possible savior. Unfortunately, this happens to be the singularly inept and cowardly wizard called Rincewind, who is last seen falling off the edge of the world. The funniest and most unorthodox fantasy in this or any other galaxy. The next book I have here is a book that has been on my radar for a while. Jen Campbell talks about it. I picked up the ARC when I still worked at Indigo, and that is Lanny by Max Porter. Again, petite, so manageable. This sounds like it fits more in line with the dark autumnal TBR. There's a village an hour from London, no different than many others. Voices rise up speaking of loving and needing and working and dying and walking the dogs. It belongs to the people who live there and the land and to its past. It belongs to dead Papa Toothwort, a fabled figure school children would draw green and leafy, choked by tendrils growing out of his mouth, who awakens after a glorious nap. He is listening to his 21st century symphony of talk, drunken confessions, gossip on the street corner, fretful conversations in living rooms. He is listening intently for a mischievous, enchanting boy whose parents have recently made the village their home. Lanny. Following my disappointment with The Wolf and the Woodsman, which is Scandinavian folklore, this sounds folklorish, not Scandinavian folklore, but folklorish. I've heard only good things about it. It sounds appropriate for fall. I feel like this might be a really fun read, and I feel like it might be the right mix of like people and myth and like small town and creepiness to be a 5-star read for me. Like, it sounds like it has a lot of things that I will like. The next book I have here is one that has been on my TBR for a while. It comes highly recommended from a friend of mine, and that is Shrill by Lindy West. So this is a piece of nonfiction. I feel like it's been a while since I've had a piece of nonfiction that like really blew me out of the water, like became a new fave that I raved about. And I'm kind of hoping that this will be it. So it is, I almost want to say memoir-ish. From a painfully shy childhood in which she tried unsuccessfully to hide her big body and even bigger opinions, to her public war with stand-up comedians over rape jokes, to her accidental activism and never-ending battle royale with internet trolls, Lindy narrates her life with a blend of humor and pathos that manages to make a trip to the abortion clinic funny and wring tears out of a story about diarrhea. It sounds like it's going to be a good time. I feel like I need a good laugh. The last book I have here is already on my autumnal TBR, and I'm anticipating this being the 5-star read out of all of them, and that is Wonderland by Zoe Stage. So this is from the author of Baby Teeth, which I read, was it last year or the year before? Time is blurring together, especially with this like lockdown pandemic life. I thought it was okay. This sounds way more up my alley. The blurb itself says it's Shirley Jackson meets The Shining. Shirley Jackson is probably my favorite female horror author. I find a lot of her work a little more unsettling as I get older than Stephen King. Like, Stephen King is probably an author that I've cited as a favorite horror author longer, but as I get older I find his works scare me less. They scared me as a little kid, but they don't now. Whereas Shirley Jackson I often find upsetting, disturbing, horrific as an adult. I think because she tackles gender and isolation and madness quite a bit. And so the idea of The Shining meets Shirley Jackson, I don't really need to know more. I haven't really read the blurb because I don't want to know more. What I'm expecting from this is like claustrophobic, isolated environments, like a very tight-knit, close cast of characters, family. I'm expecting gender critique. I'm expecting feminism. I am anticipating that this is a 5-star read for me. So I have just sampled from all 4 texts. Shrill by Lindy West is the only piece of nonfiction that I've started. I think she wrote the introduction just as the 2016 election was happening, and like Shrill is inspired by descriptions of Hillary. I don't know that I'm ready for something like this. Like, it was a long weekend. A lot of these texts are dark, but I don't know if I want something so rooted in reality at this moment. I do think that Shrill will be a great read. I just don't think it's a great read for this weekend. I do think that this will be a 5-star read still, having sampled the first chapter. Lanny was very tempting to like just keep going, which is a good sign, but I did want to sample from all of them. It opens with this entity sort of building himself out of the sludge of a forest, and he is listening for the voice of this creative child named Lanny. And we have the perspective of Lanny's mother, Lanny's father, and a guy named Pete, who's an artist who's building things out of the woods and stuff. The writing here is gorgeous. The next book that I sampled from was The Light Fantastic by Terry Pratchett. So this is the sequel, like the direct sequel to The Color of Magic, which I read ages ago. And while I'm interested in it, I don't think that I'm going to pick it up because right now I'm already reading The Wee Free Men, which is my patron October book club pick. I think I only want to read one Terry Pratchett at a time. That's probably a smart idea. So while I sampled from this, and I do think that it's delightful, it's witty, I love the absurdity of some of it. Like this first little bit, there aren't really chapters in this, so I just read about like 20 pages in. And there's this bit where they talk about how somebody got upset about metaphoric language and like it's not allowed. So like there's this line where he's like, the city slept. Well, actually, the people who like work a 9 to 5 were sleeping, and the people who are up to no good are in fact very much awake. And like there's that like asterisk. So like you can't use like flowery metaphoric language. And so that's come up a couple of times where the narrator is like, oh. And I do think this will probably be, if not a 5-star read, like a very highly rated fantasy read for myself just because of that, like tongue-in-cheek narration and just the absurdity of this fantasy world. I don't think I'm gonna read it this weekend and tackle it in this vlog because I am reading another Terry Pratchett at this moment. Still gonna keep this aside, and I will update you at some point when I actually read it if it was the 5-star read I predicted. So the book that I'm debating between, so there's 2 really, Lanny and Wonderland by Zoe Stage. So this is described as Shirley Jackson meets The Shining. And that's really all I needed to know. I didn't look at the synopsis at all. It was like the tagline on it somewhere when I read about it online, when this came into my realm of knowledge, however that I don't remember how it came about. I just remember seeing Shirley Jackson meets The Shining somewhere and it instantly went in my cart and into my home. And so this is about a artsy couple from New York. So Orla has been a professional ballet dancer. She's had 2 comebacks after 2 babies, and now that she's 40, her body is feeling professional ballet dancer, and her husband has found his calling as a painter. So he's always been this sort of wayward, creative, unmoored, very much relate to the husband here. I see myself as a wayward creative in Shaw, the husband, but Shaw has finally found his muse, and it's this tree in the Adirondacks in the middle of fucking nowhere. Everything around them is described as a hamlet. The nearest city would be Montreal, and that's in another country. Like, that's the level of isolation that they're going for. And his passion is like surrealist painting. And so they're moving their family of 4 from their like 600 square foot 1-bedroom New York apartment to the middle of fucking nowhere. You can kind of see like dark, creepy vibes between both of these books. You have some sort of nature spirit spying on a child's mind. Here you have this compulsion to move into an isolated setting as a family who isn't generally very outdoorsy. Like, they come from the heart of New York, an arts hub, a cultural center. Just because Wonderland doubles up on both my autumn TBR and my 5-star predictions, I'm tempted to prioritize it this weekend. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. All right, hello. Okay, so today is Sunday, Thanksgiving long weekend. Thank God we have Monday off because Saturday just disappeared. I have no idea where it went. I spent maybe 40 minutes yesterday reading, and I can see why this has been compared to The Shining and Shirley Jackson. We're getting these domestic questions. Orla, our former breadwinning ballerina, is having trouble finding what her role is now that she isn't a ballerina and a breadwinner. And like, her husband is being given the space to be creative and the time to be creative. Suddenly it's her job to entertain the kids and to make the house, while he can just be like off in the woods being inspired or whatever. And that dynamic, that shift in their relationship after so many years of him being like this odd jobs to make ends meet homemaker type person, like, now that's switched and the isolation is real. She's also very aware that all of the money that she has earned, that she has set aside, is going to burn up really quickly, and obviously it can take a while for an artist to make money from their art. And they are so isolated that driving to a nearby town to get a job for her, like to become a waitress in the way that he would become a waiter or a bartender, like, that's not really an option for her. Also, she's never driven before, really. She lived in New York her whole life, so she just used public transit. She never learned to drive, and now she's in the middle of fucking nowhere and like doesn't have that confidence to be mobile. The thought of not having that mobility as a reader is quite frightening, because like, even in The Shining, Wendy could drive a car. If we're comparing it to The Shining, Orla doesn't have that. I'm deeply worried for her, and that is part of this like sickening feeling that I'm developing. Like, there's a hint at maybe something supernatural with this like tree that's the husband's muse, and like the fairly extreme weather that shows up out of nowhere. What is like actually horrific is being a woman stuck in the middle of nowhere. I'm gonna pick up where I left off. So it has been quite a few days since I checked in with you about Wonderland by Zoe Stage, but I have since finished it. And for a 5-star prediction, this was incredibly disappointing. While it does in fact have Shining vibes, and it does have Shirley Jackson vibes, the characters, the plotting, the execution of certain things just didn't come together for me. I ended up giving this 2 stars, so not remotely, like, it's not even like a 4-star, like not a new fave. This is a 2-star read. It's hard, because this is a spoiler, it's a little bit of a mystery, it's hard to get into what specifically didn't work and why this is a 2-star read without spoiling anything. Without spoilers, how am I gonna do this? I think that's all I can say without spoilers, is that Orla is, I feel like, kind of wishy-washy. Like, she's a little bit all over the place. The way that this is written, it uses a lot of Orla's inner monologue, like inner dialogue with herself, to tell us what is happening. Instead of showing us what is happening, it uses strange inner monologue that I don't buy that humans, like, I don't know that I have ever, to the degree that Orla has this inner monologue, I don't know that I have had this inner monologue to reflect on the character of my daughter, for example. I found the writing itself very difficult to enjoy. On top of that, there's something sort of supernatural happening, which I feel like you can glean from the fact that this is Shining, The Shining plus Shirley Jackson. I didn't love how that ended up unfolding. It felt really half-baked and silly, and nonsensical. Like, I know that supernatural is supposed to be like wacky, anything can happen. It falls under the speculative fiction fantasy umbrella, but that means that the rules that you set in your secondary world have to be consistent. I feel like the logic behind some of these things just isn't there, and then we get to the conclusion. It is utterly bizarre, again falling in the realm of nonsense. The supernatural element, I'm trying so hard not to spoil, I feel like you're watching me like literally try and piece out how to not spoil this. The supernatural elements were just half-baked and nonsensical. Because of that, I wasn't willing to suspend my disbelief, and the conclusion of the novel requires, I think, quite a bit of buy-in. It didn't work for me. And like, I'm so disappointed. Like, I genuinely set out to pick books that I like, that I think I'm going to love, that are going to be new favorites, that I'm going to want to make reference to. I was so sure that I was gonna love this that I started making notes in it. Lately, I have been a little bit hesitant because I have limited space. I've been a little hesitant to make notes in my books if I don't think I'm going to keep them. And I was so sure that I was going to have a new favorite here on my hands that I would want to reread, that I started making notes, and I think you can kind of tell partway through where the notes just stop. That's where I was like, oh, like, no, this isn't working. Like, this isn't going to turn in any sort of way. And I think that's the key difference. It might have Shining vibes, Stephen King's The Shining vibes, in that you have this father figure slowly going mad while pursuing his art in an isolated location that has a lot of snow. It might have Shirley Jackson vibes in the haunted, like, house, land, domestic, feminist thought. The difference is that both Stephen King and Shirley Jackson are stronger writers. And I know Stephen King is not known for his endings, but at the end of a Shirley Jackson novel, I feel like you always come away satisfied. Like, Shirley Jackson knows what she's doing and executes it very precisely. Stephen King is a pantser, and it's the character development that makes his stuff compelling, not necessarily a well put together conclusion. I will be the first to admit that Stephen King books have like utterly failed for me based on a what the fuck ending. This doesn't have the craft of a Stephen King character study, and it doesn't have the craft of Shirley Jackson's commentary and like precise, thematic, intentional execution. I didn't like this. And maybe if I'd never read The Shining or any Shirley Jackson, I would have been like, oh, this is okay. But I have, and it, like, that comparison has been made. That was a fail. I did not predict this, unfortunately. I think I'm gonna end this here. So we talked earlier about how I'm already reading The Wee Free Men for the Patron Book Club for October, live show in November. Details in the description if you're interested. So I wasn't going to tackle The Light Fantastic. And then I have Lanny and Shrill, both 5-star predictions as well. And I think I might give one of these a go and hopefully try and redeem my predictions. Do I know my own taste? Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Before we go, we have to thank my patrons. Thank you, patrons, for making videos like this possible. I really appreciate the work that you enable me to do. If you are interested in becoming a patron, in reading The We Free Men by Terry Pratchett and having a live book club discussion with me, all the information is linked down below. I hope you are doing well, that you are staying safe, and I will see you soon. Bye!